Peace and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous, natural, divine heirs. Today is June the 26th, 1442 on the ancient moon calendar, 1443 on the ancient sun calendar, and 2022 on the Greco-Roman calendar. All rise and stand and remain standing into perpetuity. This is a sovereign, living, ancient Article 3 Moorish American Al-Moroccan consular court action. We are the sovereign living justices in capitis diminution nolo, in red ink, in propria persona sui juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredes. I am sovereign living justice Pauline Denise Ritchie, and my free chosen sovereign appellation is light to jure bay in capitis diminution, and both are in capitis diminution nolo, in red ink, in propria persona sui juris, in proprio solo, and in proprio heredes. All Moors are the original indigenous, sovereign, ancient, Al-Moroccan, Moorish American ascendants of the great pharaohs of Kemet and of the ancient Moabites and Canaanites. Our full faith and trust, our allegiance, our credit, and our energy are hereby vested in ourselves, for we are the people who are the original indigenous, natural, divine, sovereign, ancient empire state for Morocco, and the de jure Moorish National Republic federal government. We are the Universal Moorish American Consulate and the Article 3 Moorish American Consular Court. We are peace. We are one nation, one state, one empire, and one God. We hereby accept our sovereign ascension and exercise all sovereign rights at this time and at all points in time, nunc pro tunc. So the first thing that I want to put on the table for our discussion is something that's been prevalent that we've been hearing out there in the ethers with regard to the case of Roe versus Wade. Now, what we've been hearing is the corporate version of that story. But as we know, there's always two sides to the story. So now I'm going to speak from our Masonic side of that story of Roe versus Wade with regard to our sovereign state, our status, and all that has to do with us. So Roe versus Wade is Masonic language, and it was first supposedly in a quote-unquote abortion case back in 1971, and we already know, or 1970, it was in the 70s, sometime in the 70s. It was either 71 or 78, somewhere around there. And the reason that it's coming up so much today is the same reason that it was coming up then. Those who are 33rd degree Masons and above already know where the Moors are in what we're doing. So let me start by saying that Roe versus Wade is not actually a case. I won't say it's not actually a case, but if you think about the words, Roe, that's a C word. That's about boats. And wading is about the water, right? And so there are no coincidences in all that we're doing. Rowing versus wading has to do with our statehood and how we pronounce and announce that. As you'll remember, back in the late 60s and early 70s, there was a civil rights subrogation of our identity going on at that time, where we were being supposedly handed civil rights. So there was a lot of marching, there was a lot of Martin Luther King and all of that. And again, we're not denigrating anyone, we're just putting the facts out there. And as long as we were the ones out in the streets marching for civil rights, thinking that we were getting rights for ourselves, then the subrogation had happened, where it was being enacted, where we were thinking that we were citizens when we were not. We never could be. And that happened then, and then there was an attempt to revive all of that with BLM, Black Lives Matter, and all of that to see if we would get out in those streets and start, you know, talking about civil rights and demanding civil rights. Well, civil rights are not for us. Sovereign rights are ours already. So when you talk about the timing of it, that's where the timeline is concerned. Now, where rowing versus wading is this. Those are sea terms. And remember the song, row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. Are the living still asleep? Is what that's really all about. And so recently the actors announced that Roe versus Wade was overturned. That means that the vote that the corporates were in was overturned. And they said that the decision would now be handed to the states. What does that mean? That means that there is a sovereign state that has emerged, or sovereign states that have emerged, that can properly proclaim the babies at birth so that there are no more abortions, because abortion really is when we, the heirs, the living, when we were coming through the Stargate, we were alive and we remained alive. We've never been dead. But at the end of the birthing table, there was a harbor master waiting to give documentation to mother and have mother to consent, our sovereign mothers to consent to dead documentation. That states that, because if the documents are issued and handed to us by the dead, then someone is claiming a status that's not theirs. We were claiming a dead status, and that's not who we are. If we accept documentation from the dead, then, and we say, okay, this is me, birth certificate, social security card, driver's license, all of that, we're saying this is me. So where abortion is concerned, every one of us who had those documents issued, we didn't die because we can't die. We just changed form. But when those documents were put on the record and our sovereign mother said, hey, here, this is our baby, then that's considered an abortion by definition of the word abortion. And so I'll say this about that. The word abortion in the dictionary is just below the word aborigines. And so, and that's not anything, because again, when we use the word aborigines, we're not even talking about the dead, we're talking about the living. So those who call themselves aborigines, rest assured, they're fine. You can call yourself whatever you want to call yourself. And you're sovereign, so you can do that. So, but in the dead state, all words are corrupt. So when you look at the word abortion in the dictionary, which we will do shortly, rowing and wading is what the corporates were doing, the corpses. That's what they were doing. They were in a boat, rowing and wading and pretending to be the heirs. And that's why documents and shipping have everything to do with the language that is used and what we accept as the heirs and what we assent to as the heirs. And so the boat that they were on, they're announcing publicly, the Masons, the 33rd degrees, are announcing that the foreign dead U.S. corporations that were floating, their boat has been overturned. And they're not rowing anymore, and they're not wading in the water anymore. There's a sea change that has happened. And so now everything is turned over to the quote-unquote states, but they're talking about dead states, and we'll show you that a little in here also. For every fraudulent U.S. corporation, company, birth certificate that was issued without proper rebuttal from the heirs, without proper rebuttal, that particular document symbolized and enacted an abortion or a commercial death. That's a baby was born, but a death certificate was issued because those are dead documents. And that was recorded as a death of the baby, of the creditor, and then debtor documents and zombies started pretending to be us and going about doing things and getting things and saying things and pretending to be us. So earth-wide, the 33rd degrees and the 32nd degrees and the 31st degrees are telling everyone earth-wide that the sovereign heirs are alive and that they have taken complete control of the process of naming the living heirs at birth. In other words, just issuing living birth affidavits. And when we do that as a state, the state, because there's no other, it's the state. And when I say there's no other, all living Moors are the state, in however they choose to present that. And so with us having taken control, first, we've taken control of the capitalism, because that is the mechanism by which that quote-unquote democratic process was doing all of its business. So when we took control of the capitalism, now we can say, no, we're in red in all lowercase letters. We're the savior at birth. And then we can put it in blue to do commerce and use capital letters however we choose. And so we're going to do a couple of actions today to further state that, to state who we really are, and to state that all babies born are living. And that includes those who are hybrid. They are living. When we say all rise and stand, everyone's alive when we say that. And when they stand, like the Empress said in the last call, they stood. When she said all rise and stand and came in, they stood. That means that they know, and they're signaling to everyone that it is finished, it's done. So the first thing that I want to point out is, if you have a dictionary, and I would encourage each and every Moor who hears this or who's here presently to always bring a dictionary with you. Have it next to you wherever you are, if you can. Have a dictionary next to you so that we can look these words up and see what's being stated. So the word abortion, let's talk just a little bit about it so that we will know that, let me point this out about the word abortion and the word aborigine or aboriginal. And again, calling yourself aboriginal, you can do that. You're sovereign and no one can stop you, and we agree and affirm your sovereign status. When the foreign hybrids, the foreign corporates, because we're not mad at people and we love everyone. We want to speak about the spirit that did all of this Okay, because in our ancient records it says, the letter killeth, but the spirit maketh alive. And all can live when we know the things that we know about who we are. So when the foreigners, that foreign spirit, when it uses words and defines words, what it does is it breaks those words up. Let me make this bigger so we can, I want to be sure that we can all see what's going on here. When they etymologically break words up, they tend to break it up, and they always do, in a corrupt manner and in a corrupt place in the word. And if they can't break it up in a corrupt place, they spell it the way they taught others to spell. They taught us to spell. They will drop a letter that anciently that letter was there, or they will transpose or switch the vowels, etc. And so when you look at the word abortion versus aboriginal, and it's not versus because we're speaking it, this word, any word that begins with AB, when we say it, it means ab, as in from, and original, the original, from the original. That's what we meant it to mean in our intention, is we were saying, you know, we're from the originals, and in our state we say we are the originals because we are. But for those who say aboriginal, you're correct also. Whereas a word like abortion, they will split it here instead of here, etymologically. Okay, so it gives it a different definition. And that is a corruption of the language, because it should not be split there. It shouldn't be split there. And so what we do with ancient English is we just put another B there and maybe put an E on the end, so that it does, even if you split it there, you're still going to get from something. From something. It's coming from something. Okay? Now, what is the root word of abortion? The root word of abortion is bore. Well, what does bore mean? And again, where they separate it, it will give it this meaning. Instead of it being ab, which is from, an ortion, or an or, from, or, shun, with, and we can look up tion and see what that means. So whenever they separate it corruptively. And this root word right here will mean to put a hole in something, to put a hole in it, or to corrupt. If you so let's look now at the meaning of abortion. Now, in this dictionary, and I wanted to point this out, aboriginal has the correct meaning because it's separated correctly, almost correctly, not really, but almost. We as etymologists would separate this differently from the way they did here. And we could go into that, but we'll save that for another day. The word that we want to look at is abort and abortion, because they have everything to do with shipping, travel, and birth. The word abort, here, the third definition that they have is to cut short, an action or operation of an aircraft, a guided missile, etc., as because of some failure in the equipment. We just talked recently about aircraft, right? When we talked about this flag right here, this is an aircraft flag. It signifies aircraft, space, the air, and we have dominion over the air. But what was happening before was this was backwards. So it gave the frauds something that they don't deserve and don't have really. But it appeared to give them from what we could see because we were asleep. It was backwards. So when the Biblioheliotext talks about the prince of the power of the air commanding everything, that's what it's talking about. And I'll say this too about even the quoting of the Bible. The reason that we quote the Biblioheliotext is numerous, but I'll just give two reasons why we do that. We do that, number one, because the original was written by the ancient Sibyls. The Vatican is ancient Timbuktu, and that is ours. So we were always there, and we're still there. We just needed to speak properly and not acquiesce. And so that's the first reason. And the second reason that we quote the Biblioheliotext is because the more we quote it, the less the fakes can use it against our brothers and sisters who are in those churches. And again, there's nothing wrong with church. There's nothing wrong with Christians. We love Christians. I have Christians in my family. I grew up Christian, and I love my family. We quote the Biblioheliotext in its proper context where we're concerned, so that the corruption is taken out of it. We go back to the red letter edition of the Biblioheliotext because the things that are written in red are spoken by the Savior. So we just did what our ancestor Yeshua did, who is the grandson of Ruth the Moabitess. And we said, okay, let's look at that and let's put that into back into its proper place. So abortion is talking about to cut short an action or operation of an aircraft, a guided missile, etc. So whenever they're talking about war and abortion and things like that, those are all actions that have to do with us. It has to do with us. Let's look at the word abortion. We looked at abort. Let's look at the word abortion. And let me see if I can make this a little bit bigger. And I apologize for it being small like that. Here, let's move this over to the center. And we'll do the same for this one. Okay. Abortion. And please feel free to grab your dictionary so that we can, if you have anything that you want to add to what we're saying, please feel free to do so. Abortion, the act of miscarrying. Have you heard of an aircraft carrier? It's a military term, and it's military equipment. We, the matriarchs, who carry the babies and carry and birth the nations, we are I wanted to say weapons of peace. We really are. And for every heir that we carry and every heir that we birth, it is yet another act of peace to have the babies. And so we have to prepare for our babies to come by getting documentation on the public record that is proper and that is right, and true documentation. So where abortion is concerned, it says here, the third one says, in a figurative sense, any fruit or produce that does not come to maturity or anything or perfect as anything, just one moment, I think I cut part of that off. Let me make sure. Yes, or anything, it does not come to maturity or anything which has in its progress, it is matured or perfect as a design or project. So our living development is, there is an action or an enactment that arrests our development when we accept those documents, the fraudulent document. And so that is why there's been such a stagnation in all that we have seen over the years. We've seen technology and everything just come to a stop. Things that we knew we had advanced beyond came to a complete stop. There was an arrested development that happened when we started accepting those documents. So now that we are not accepting those documents but producing our own, it's time for technology and everything to catch up and then supersede. We'll look at these first couple of definitions: the act of miscarrying or producing young before the natural time, and or before the fetus is perfectly formed. It's called criminal abortion when it's unlawful, which it is unlawful. And we're actually going to go ahead as a state and proclaim on the public record today together that abortion is wrong. What does that mean? We don't even have to look at anyone else where abortion is concerned. All we have to do is make sure that, number one, we don't go to foreigners for all that we need with regard to the birthing of our nation. And number two, making sure that proper documentation of the heirs is on the public record. And we have 9 months to do it. Before the babies even come, we have time to do it, to put those documents on the public record, and then notify that the living is here, not the dead. That is a must. We must do it. And look at number two, the fetus brought forth before it is perfectly formed, hence anything misshapen or imperfectly developed, a monstrosity. And doesn't the word human mean monster? It does. We have to proclaim our godness as a part of us. That way no monstrosity is formed. And how do we do that? With the red documents first on the public record, and then the blue document. So it says here in biology, the incomplete or arrested development of an organ whose development has been arrested. Now let's think about all of that word and everything. This that we're talking about with regard to our documentation is why Moors have been being arrested. It's because of those documents, and no proper rebuttal to those documents done by the state, which is us. That is what stopped our, it appeared to stop our development as the state and as the nation and as the government and as the law and as the heirs to all land, all natural resources, and all commerce. So all of that we've put a stop to. And we, empresses, I'll speak to the matriarchs with regard to this. And of course, we speak to the sons as well, because, but the baby is coming from the womb of the matriarch before anyone else sees the baby. So matriarchs, it is up to us first to protect our heirs from abortion. It's up to us to do that. That is our job, to ensure that the documentation is correct for our heirs. That's our job. And we cannot look at anyone else to do that, because it's not anyone else's responsibility. It is ours. And matriarchs, for your heirs and for your grand heirs, you can do that also. And I don't have any grand heirs yet. But if I had grand heirs by the empress that I birthed, because, and I won't say that I don't have any, because my consort has a son who has heirs, and I do consider them my grand heirs. We can still put documentation on the public record for them. All we need to know is what name their mother has given them. Okay, if they're by those who are not the heirs, if they're by hybrids, then they can put blue documents on the public record that say that they are citizens. Moorish subjects ipso jure, which is what the law says. Moorish subjects ipso jure. Look that up, because some have a problem with the title of subject. But as I was stating to someone on social media earlier this week, we cannot leave those who are born subjects, we cannot leave them unprotected because we are uncomfortable with that term. We can't leave them unprotected. Even in the biblioteliothek, they are called joint heirs. Joint heirs. We're the heirs, they are joint heirs. What is a joint heir? A joint heir is someone who's protected by the heirs. And when subjects are in subject status, there is protection for them. Why? Because we've done court actions that say, all rise and stand, they're not dead. They're not dead either. Neither, we're not, and then we can raise everyone else. The dead in Christ shall rise. That's our job. That is our job. Abortion stops. It stops. So what have we done as the state and as the government, as the nation? The votes that we have taken on these calls to put things, protective measures in place, is stopping all of that. And that's why it's coming up like it's been coming up. They've been signaling each other that, okay, this is where the heirs are in their processes. So when they announce something out like that and people get out in the streets, and you know, it's not us out there in the streets like that. If you look, it's the subjects out there in the street doing the marching and the rioting even, and all of that over these issues. They're calling all of the others, the whole rest of the earth, they're saying, look at this, look at what's happening. This is what's happening, listen to the language. Rowing and wading is not anything that we need to worry about. That's for corpses who refuse to get in alignment, and corpses can't get in alignment. We send them away, and that, because a corpse is a spirit. The letter killeth, but the spirit maketh alive. And when we speak to that spirit, it has to go. And then the heirs can breathe. They can breathe. Abortive. It says, and this is important, these words are being used for a reason. It's a dictionary. They choose words carefully. And this is from an 1828 Webster unabridged dictionary, which is not always correct because again, this version was not written by us. So yes, we do have to produce our own dictionaries, heirs, just so that we're aware of what's coming. Yes, we have to produce our own dictionaries, and we're doing it as we go. Abortive, it's an adjective. Brought forth in an immature state. What's an immature state? It's minors. It's a state filled with minors. So remember the Pope's motu proprio and the one doing business as Pope's motu proprio. Let me correct that. The subject in the custodian that was in the office of the Pope, he issued a motu proprio that still has to be put on the public record by the heirs. And some heirs have already put it on the public record. We affirm their version of it. But he spoke of America Major and America Minor. This is what, all of this is the same thing, brought forth in an immature state. It's only when we put our own documentation on the public record competently and we competently speak on these things that we are no longer an immature state. And we never were, we just needed to proclaim it properly. The word mature has ma in it or mat in it. That has to do with mother, the matriarch. Matriarchs, welcome to maturity. We've got work to do, lots and lots of work to do. We have work to do. And a lot of that work is ministerial. That means putting out the papal bulls, the bullas, that properly identify our heirs. That is actually what an original papal bull was. An original bulla, was something that we gave at birth to our children, and first we documented them properly, and then we gave them a bulla which they hung around their necks. It's just a gold symbol or sigil for their protection. And originally we gave that to our sons for protection because originally our sons were not the matriarchs. Doesn't mean that they're not sovereign. It just means that they were not giving birth. They were not carrying the babies. So we gave them a specific bulla for them and celebrated their lives with that. At birth, making sure that it was on the record that they are the living and that they are the heirs, the sovereign heirs. So here, abortive, failing in its effect, miscarrying, producing nothing. Producing nothing. They were acting with those documents, okay, state that nothing was produced by the mother. And therefore, a debt is incurred with those documents. A birth certificate issued by anyone other than the living heirs is productive of nothing. It's chaotic. And here it says chaotic. What is confusion and chaos? That is the definition of the word war. So here it says in medicine, number 5, in medicine, producing abortion as abortive drugs, cutting short a disease process. Now, when they say a disease process, even the process of aging among the heirs is a disease. And when we know who we are, even that is aborted. When we know who we are and then we begin to observe and honor the principles of our foremothers and forefathers, we live longer. And when we were in our sleep, that was hypothecated by someone saying, black don't crack, because aging is aborted. And of course, this says in medicine. Well, what is medicine? Our food is our medicine. So now we have to bring about the foods that give us back, that reverse the clock on the aging piece. And we have absolute authority to do that. I will tell you that fasting is a huge part of that. Fasting is huge when it comes to things that assist in aborting disease and cutting short a disease process. Because disease is not natural, it's a process. It's not natural. It says abortive in biology, number 6. In biology, incompletely developed, imperfect, or stunted as an organ. So, and then let me call your attention to the word abortiveness. It's a noun, the state of being abortive or immature. It says, and what is that about? Want of success. Want of success, the state of being abortive. Abortment, an untimely birth. Think about a birth certificate. It's announcing something that's not really what happened. And when I say birth certificate, it's the ones that are produced by the dead. At birth, we're already perfect and successful because we're the heirs. We just have to pronounce that on the public record properly so that there is no abortment. Mental. It's all in the mind. And once our mind is returned to, which it already is, to the ways of our foremothers and forefathers, then there's no more untimely birth into a dead state, an immature state. What we have seen when we thought we were quote unquote black, we've seen the heirs acting out immaturely, acting out in an immature manner, fighting, speaking poorly of each other, being passive aggressive towards one another, not supporting one another in lawful things. That is the remnant signs of an immature state. It's abortive. Whenever you hear someone speaking negatively about your nation, your state, or others, or even the sleeping Moors, it's abortive. It's abortive. And so there is constructive abortment, and then there is destructive abortment. An untimely birth or an abortion of a monster is, or an abortion of something that is dead is not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing because it's already dead. So what are we doing? We're speaking about not people, but processes. Aborting dead processes. We don't kill, we bring life to everything and everyone. That's why we're here. So all of this talk about Roe versus Wade, will the heirs stand or will we? And we already know the answer is yes. The answer is yes. Okay. So here, just one moment. Let me. So we want to now open the floor for any comments with regard to what we just spoke about. Here, let me clear a couple of things up here first. Okay. Are there any questions or comments? What we just spoke about? We are, you can star 6 to
why isn't Angel Bay got her conveyance yet? Angel Bay, honey.
Islam. I'm looking in, I have a 1872 thesaurus, and the word abortion does not exist in this etymology dictionary.
Wow. That says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. I searched, bort came up, but it's a definition, it's part of a definition. The word bort doesn't even exist as a definition.
Yes.
I have to figure out what bort means.
Take the T off and put V-O-R-E. Bore is the root word etymologically of abortion.
Okay.
Yeah, and that has a lot to do with the estate. If you build a wall around your estate and there is a hole that is bored into that, then the estate is not safe. Now, let's think also about the word born. Someone being born is a rupture in the best way. It is a beautiful rupture. That means that you're getting your crown coming into this estate, which is this dimension, this realm. So it is also a B-O-R-E, a boring into this, being born into this dimension. And as we know, stargates, that is the boring from one dimension to the other. And that is what makes the matriarch so special. Not that the sons are not, and not that the subjects are not, but we have to speak about the matriarch and her I want to say position in the universe. We don't want to put that we don't want to taint that with ego. We want to tell the truth about it. And so only the matriarch can bore or break through the different dimensions. We're bringing spirits and manifesting them in this dimension. And no one else can do that. Only the heirs can do that. Only the matriarchs can do that. And then those who did not, because we know that there are some who their beginnings were here on earth. Whereas our beginning, there is no beginning and no end with us. That's in the Holy Quran. So everything that I'm saying can be validated, or not validated, but affirmed by the law. We have no beginning, we have no end. We just said, okay, let us manifest. Let us go down and make man in our image and after our likeness. Let's manifest. The man that we were talking about is us. We said, hey, let's go down and manifest in this manner. Manifest. Man-I-fest. And so the matriarch does that and then brings others here. So what are we doing now? We're making it so that those who come here can really, really enjoy this estate. Absolutely enjoy it. Free from abortion. Free from abortion. They don't have to worry about that because the matriarch is protecting by doing the proper documentation and stating on the public record the proper documentation. A lot of the words that are used today, and that's why we use ancient English. Some say ancient English is not a language, but no one can tell the sovereigns what they speak. No one, not even another sovereign, can say that's not a language, when the only thing that they were taught was something that a foreigner taught them. No foreigner taught us ancient English. It comes straight from within, and we cast our spells the way we want to. That actually makes it the purest language, because no one had to teach it to us. It's coming straight from within, just like everything else, just like our energy and everything else. So I want to just take a moment to honor the matriarchs. I honor you. I honor you. I honor each and every one of you, because the magnitude, the more I study us, the more I see the magnitude of who we are. And that is why all shall rise and stand at our word. So are there any other beautiful, thank you, Empress, for bringing that forth with the dictionary. A lot of the words we use today, we did not use back in the day. There was no word for God back in ancient times. Why? Because it was just us. It was just us. And we didn't have, this was before we created subjects. It was just, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. It was just us and our word and whatever we said. And we had and still have dominion over all. And then we created subjects, and we created the animals and all of that. We created everything that exists. We created it. Don't be fooled. We created everything that exists, and those who know law know that. So even when we were asleep, they had an obligation to say the quote-unquote black woman is the mother, quote-unquote, of civilization. And that's the hypothecation of the truth. The truth is the matriarch is the mother of all, everything, and everyone. And that's each and every matriarch. So matriarchs, there were some things, and this is for everyone, but just know, matriarchs, there was a specific psychological operation that was put in place or acted in place that said that we should not be unified and that there is competition between us when there isn't. We are one and we are God, period. So the ancestors are just bringing it forth now. And I will say that I'm so grateful for the matriarchs that are on this call and the matriarchs that are hearing this, because each and every one of us is unified in our thoughts and our spirits. And those that are not are coming into unity with the unity energy. And all we're doing is manifesting and speaking and casting and breaking spells where unity is concerned. That is what we do, is cast the spell of unity and break the spell of disunity. And that's what this is all about for us, so that abortion ends. And for our nation and our state, it never was, because we have the documentation since time immemorial into perpetuity. We're just manifesting it now in this dimension. Are there any other comments or wisdom? Thank you for your wisdom, Empress, about what we've spoken about. Roe v. Wade, Islamism.
I just wanted to say that I've been around long enough to remember as a child the love and the companionship of the women that I grew up with. My mother and aunts and their closest friends. We were best of friends. We took care of everybody. We took care of ourselves. This separation of the women is something that is learned recently.
Yes.
But I remember those times, and it was the most nurturing times, and then I'm so happy to have experienced that, so I myself can pass that along, to anyone who wanted to, So I just wanted to share that. It hasn't always been like this. And I really think on the deeper level, we really do love each other, and we can get all the other mess out of the way, and then once we all get together, the world is healed. That's my feeling of the world. So that's all I wanted to share.
Thank you, Empress. Yes, I affirm that I'm just grateful that what was is no longer, in terms of this sleep period that we've been in, and or that we acted in, and that the time that you're referring to, Empress, that energy is back, where we are one. And we look out for one another. And there were times where, in in the past, even if the matriarchs had something in common that both wanted, they still knew how to come to agreement about it. Something or someone, even. If there were two matriarchs, they would pick up the phone and say, okay, Betty, Bob, what are we going to do about Bob? Not what Bob says. It's going to be, what do the matriarchs decide? What do we want to do about that? And I'm using that as an example. But there are other things, other people and other things that is in reference to. And then we stick to our agreement. That's a contract that the matriarchs made. And we said, okay, Tuesday and Thursday, no, we didn't say that. But however the matriarchs decided, because they're sovereign, however they decided to deal with an issue. And 9 times out of 10, one of the matriarchs said, you know what, Betty, you got this one. I'll catch the next one on the way out. I'll catch the next one. So, it's a wrap on abortion from the negative perspective. And then we will continue to abort processes that are dead by putting living processes in its place. And so, Morris, it's important that we replace. And I find the word place even interesting, because placenta, where birth is concerned, placenta means that there was something there. A placenta is the place where the heir was, and where the heir and the matriarch exchanged energies, information, and biological things, cells, life. Placenta. That is where the baby takes in the nutrients, and also the baby puts out pure nutrients and some call it waste. It's not even waste. It is recirculated back through our system, giving us nourishment. So, I mean, as I was doing the study for this sharing session and this congressional assembly, in order that we can put the law on the public record about our state and how and what abortion means and what we state is the law. I went on down the rabbit hole because I looked at placenta and I thought, yes, that's what that is. Because now we're talking about, you know, that placenta, and then that brought me to the afterbirth. And so I thought, well, why is it that they even issued those dead documents? They were issuing those dead documents to claim the afterbirth, but we fell asleep and we said, we're that, the dead. And so that just animated zombie corporations to say, okay, well, we'll do all of these things. We'll be the creditor. Because when the matriarchs give birth, there's two births that take place. One is the living heir, and the other is the afterbirth. So we actually have to properly proclaim that too, because afterbirth for us is not dead. It's a living organ that housed and held. It's the shipping mechanism. It's a conveyance. Afterbirth is a conveyance. Placenta is a conveyance. And so when you talk about the seas and birthing and docking, those are shipping terms. The placenta has the water in it. So everything that has to do with us is manifesting now because of proper documentation on the public record. Properly identifying everything and everyone. So I looked up placenta, and it was a definition. It was beautiful, and then I went into the indigenous and what we did with the placenta, the afterbirth rather, because it's placenta. It's a place as long as the baby is there, and then it's afterbirth afterwards. And we had ceremonies with regard to the placenta, so that there would be no false claiming of it. Okay, and it's only when we went into foreign hand or hospital, or enacted going into foreign hospitals, that we stopped taking the afterbirth and having the ceremony for it, for the afterbirth, because it is a sacred organ, because it assisted with conveying the heirs and having them bore and be born into this dimension. So we held ceremony for the afterbirth, and we buried it in a place that was sacred. We had sacred burial grounds for the afterbirth as well. And we don't even know what, and I can't say we don't know, we do know. We have some idea what was being done with the afterbirth. Corporations were attempting to do things and act things out and clone things and all of that, and hypothecate and subrogate. But there were documents issued because a claim was made. And all they did was switch it and say, nope, mother took the dead baby home, and we have the living in our possession. So that is why doulas are so important, and that is why Moorish hospitals are so important, and Moorish medical facilities, and things that nurture the matriarch and the baby. So what does the state have to do with that? What the state does, and this is what our state is everything that we're doing is continued manifestation that we are fully prepared for the living and to develop, for our heirs to develop, to have the erudition that they need in order to know never to go into the capitalism or accept someone else's person. Okay, not to go into foreign capitalism, and that they're the fiduciaries of their all caps if they want to do commerce in some way, so that no one else can claim it, and anything that they see that resembles the living state, if it didn't come from the living state, it's not living. That means that we don't have to claim that in documentation or in 3D. So that brings us to, I was having several conversations over the last couple of weeks with regard to what was being done previously, where Moors, whom we honor, were filing things and recording things and putting forms on the public record with regard to the Moors and the Moorish estate. And I will also include in that the Moorish Science Temple of America and, you know, any other Moorish organizations and institutions. Because we're talking now about, when you're talking about birth, you're talking about the estate. And so this week I've had conversation, and I'm so grateful for the Supreme Judiciary, and you all are the Grand Supreme Judiciary, so you're a part of that, for continuing to point to things that we need to pay attention to, and that we need to, as a grand body, put on the public record. So at this time, before I go into this next portion, I would like for us to put on the public record, we'll just state it, we'll state the obvious, because we have to state the obvious because it's our state, that abortion by way of fraud and fraudulent documents is unlawful. Because again, there's another side to the term abortion, where we are by what we're about to do, we are aborting a fraudulent process known as abortion. So there's two sides to that. So we want to word it specifically, that we just want to affirm that corporate fraudulent United States corporation company abortion is criminal and unlawful, and that it is abolished. And I will say abolished, but it never was in our state. So we just want to reiterate that that it's unlawful on our state, on our on our estate. Islam Empress, in the chat, the Empress says placenta didn't exist in 1872 either, according to the book that she's reading. She says there was a moribus placentiae, and that was administered 1388, associated with the Catholic Church. Yes, we didn't even have to name a placenta. It was we called it a conveyance, or I don't want to use the term because it's misunderstood, but a ship. A ship. And so whenever they said, they were saying, yeah, those people came here in slave ships. All they were saying was the matriarch had been capitalized fraudulently and was pretending to be the slave of Slavs, S-L-A-V-S. And that's not, again, we're not talking about a specific people. We're talking about the spirit of a Slavic. Slavic is not original and indigenous from our perspective, where where we're concerned. We want to make sure we use the right words, because again, this is not about people, it's about persons. It's not about people. We love people. We love all people. It's about the spirit and the person, and persons is all caps. So that's important. The word the moribus placentiae, the root word of the moribus is more. And so whenever we look back in history, we see words where if we don't rebut it, it's going to mean something dead if we don't rebut it. Mortgage is dead pledge. But a Moor's gauge helps you navigate the land and property properly. So we would spell it according to ancient English, Moor gauge, because they don't even pronounce it mort gauge, which is the way they spell it. They pronounce it the way it was pronounced by us, Moor gauge. It is a gauge of what we own. So the moribus placentiae, and D means not, or it means to, depending on how you use it and whether it's connected to the word or not. DI and DE are the same because of in our original languages, vowels were interchangeable. So what I would like for us to do is just state that abortion by means of fraudulent documentation is unlawful for our state and for our estate and our land and for earth. So all those in agreement or in affirmation of that, if you would please state your affirmation and just say affirmed. And those who do not agree with that, just say I do not affirm Islam. And you can star 6 to do that.
Chatali
Islam.
Islam.
Islam konsulate.
Islam.
Just one moment. Justice Consul, go ahead. Just one moment. Justice Consul, go ahead.
Konsulate. UK territory. I affirm.
Islam. Go ahead, nobility. There was another noble who was about to speak.
Islam.
Islam.
Islam. Appeal can never easily held. Philadelphia territory. Affirm.
Islam.
Islam. Angelica Yvette Dobbs Bay. Mohawk Providence. Affirm.
Islam.
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 Tell us.
Go ahead, Empress,
Islam.
please. The Empress from Mississippi Territory. Go ahead, Empress.
That's right. Helen Crowder L., Mississippi Territory, I affirm.
Islam. Go ahead, nobility.
Eddie J. Bay, Illinois Territory, I affirm.
Islam.
Islam. Morpheus Pascal, Freeman, Maryland Territory, affirm.
Islam.
Islam. Tunis Bay, Khalifa Territory, yes.
Islam. Thank you, Justice Thomas.
Islam.
Go ahead, Empress.
Ronnie L. Okay.
Islam Rose, Spirit Bay, Minnesota Territory, I affirm.
Islam. Go ahead, nobility. Thank you.
Islam Ronnie L. Bay, Florida Territory, confirm.
Islam.
Carolina Wiggins Eel, I affirm.
Islam. Thank you.
Alabama Territory.
Islam.
Islam?
Yes, Islam. Go ahead, nobility.
Abasi Kali Bay, affirm.
Islam. Thank you, Justice Basi.
Islam. Malik Akil Bay, affirm.
Islam.
Islam. Willie Irvin Smith Bay, Mississippi Territory, affirm.
Islam.
Islam Rose L., California Territory, affirm.
Islam. Thank you, Empress.
Islam. Tiffany Renee Harris Bay, affirm.
Islam. Thank you, Empress.
Islam. Musa Jubei, Memphis, Tennessee, affirm.
Islam. Thank you, nobility.
Islam. Onlinne Bay, Trinidad Territory, affirm.
Islam. Thank you, nobility.
Islam.
Islam.
It's the K2 IHL in the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania Territory, affirm.
Islam. Thank you, nobility.
Vania L., Massachusetts Territory. Affirm.
Islam. The first Empress that...
Justice Cynthia Ann Bay. That was me.
Oh, Islam.
Oh, I'm going to try again. Justice Cynthia Ann Bay, Khalifa Territory. Affirmed.
Islam. There was another Empress also who was saying something, who was voting at the time.
Vania L., Massachusetts Territory, affirm.
Thank you, Empress. Yes. Thank you.
Islam.
Islam.
Karima Bay, Virginia Territory, affirm.
Islam. Thank you, Empress.
Islam, Kamal Bay, Washington Territory, affirm.
Thank you, Justice Kamal. Islam.
Islam.
In the chat, there are some affirmations as well. Justice Raymond Bay L., affirm. Justice Dawood Bilal Abdullah Bay, affirm. Brother Smith Bay, affirm. And Justice Michael Dumois McGee Bay, affirm. Islam. Thank you, nobilities in the chat as well. I believe, are there any other affirmations or non-affirmations? Islam. So we do have, this is a unanimous affirmation because we did not have any that did not affirm. And for that, we are grateful. So for our sovereign state, abortion by means of fraudulent documentation is unlawful. And all at earth and all on our lands are to those who shall issue lawful documents, and those who were previously in court status, you are not to issue any documentation. And the subjects and custodians in the office of, you shall ensure that documentation is lawfully issued as well. So according to, in as much as your custodial duties can do, because custodians are limited in what they can do. So with that being placed on the public record, I affirm as well, and for that we are grateful. It is the law. The people have spoken, and that is our verdict. So I want to show you why what we're doing is so important. We're going to move to now. Let me say that I'm thinking faster, much faster than I'm speaking, and that's why I keep saying interrupting my own sentences. First, let me say that it is of the utmost importance that our voices be heard on the public record with regard to these issues, and that is why we say that is why it is best that we speak and that each voice be heard, so that the whole earth knows that the heirs are governing and that we are governing together. We don't have any leaders. We're all doing this as one. Just one moment. There's a little bit of noise coming from one or two of the lines. So if there's any noise in your background, if you would please *6 to mute as well. Thank you. That's number one, is that it's important that our voices be heard. So we will be voting more often because as we move forward, we are the government, we are the law, and we always have been, but no one heard from us collectively. And so the unity that is being shown here and us voting together, whether we agree or disagree, we have the authority to do that, but we need to be heard either way. So the reason why this is so important is because I need to point something out about, I can't say I need to point it out. I am compelled to point it out about the state of Illinois and the records and the recording that has been going on there. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
As well.
Thank you. Okay. What I'm going to point out is what we've been saying all along, but to see it in writing, I was moved by what I saw. I was doing some research based on some information that the justices on the judiciary had brought forth about the state of Illinois and their records and the things that have been put on the public record, because according to what we have been hearing and seeing, the Moors at birth, all of us were supposed to have proper documentation that says that we are of the Moroccan Empire, that we're Moroccan Empire nationals and not anything dead. And that was what we've been seeing says that we were supposed to do that through by way of putting it on the record at Illinois, not state of Illinois, but Illinois, which we have done, by the way. So first, let me show you where the state of Illinois had, and I'll say the state of Illinois Corporation, had placed everyone in a dead status. And all records and anyone, no matter whether they were claimed to be government, the state, all of that, they had placed everyone in a dead status, especially if you put something on their records and were not properly proclaimed. So let me say that based on the vote that we just took, as we're going into this, we may or may not start seeing hospitals turn mothers away if said hospital has not been notified by receipt of proper living birth affidavits before the mother arrives to give birth. And when I say our mothers, I'm talking about the brown skin, the sleeping Moors. The hospitals may turn them away in order to wake them up. You might start seeing that. They were going to do that anyway, and what we did not realize is that they've been either turning them away or subrogating identities of the living heirs, which we proved that they've been doing, that's been happening with the corpses, or other tragic events and things happening that don't need to happen. So we might start seeing them, and if you watch the news media, they may say, "Oh, she was turned away because she was quote unquote black." Okay. Yes. Empress Rose put in the chat, taking children at birth by quote unquote CPS or Child Protective Services. We're the Child Protective Services, because we're the living, and the living are the only who can properly protect a child. And so those sovereign, this sovereign state, okay, must provide for the safe arrival, care, erudition, and development of our babies. That's our responsibility. And when I say this sovereign state, it means every matriarch in that is the state, because you're not in a state, you are the state. Each and every one of us. And if there are some who don't believe in quote unquote Moorish science, that's okay, because this is not about feelings and beliefs, it's the law. And the law says that everyone must be properly registered with the state. When we say the word register, we know we're the crown. All matriarchs are the crown. There's a little bit of feedback coming from one of the lines. Let me see. I think it's, okay, yeah, I found it. And please don't take the muting personally. We just want to make sure that everyone can hear. So it's our job as the sovereign state to protect the children by proper documentation. We are the temple. So for those who say that the temples should be doing this, we can't even point at the corporate, and we're talking about the corporate temple now, the 501c3s that have been in existence since the early 1900s. We can't even point at them and say it's their fault, because it's really not. It's our fault. It's not our fault. It's something. It's our job. It's our responsibility. We are the temple. Our bodies are the living temple. Moorish temple, holy temple for science. That's our bodies. So we have to put in place the proper mechanisms by which our heirs are living and pronounced living. So this sovereign state has made it our responsibility and as a part of what we do, to provide for the safe arrival, care, erudition, and development of our babies. Those who choose to engage in procreation, okay, and when I say those who agree to engage in procreation, I'm speaking of the matriarchs, and that's no matter what the age of the matriarch is in terms of responsibility, because there are some matriarchs who have had children at 15 and 16 and 17 years old. you still have a responsibility. You're the first line of defense for the babies. So as the state and as the government and as the law, you must create the documentation competently so that your heirs are not aborted commercially and systemically. And all matriarchs can do that. All matriarchs can do that. So with regard to the state of Illinois, I want to bring your attention to, and I'll put the link to this in the chat. By the way, underneath this video on there's a question in the chat. I'm putting a link in the chat for what we're about to discuss. The question in the chat is, it says that in the news on Friday, it was reported that abortion was illegal by the Supreme Court. Does this have anything to do with? They didn't, the corporates did not act out that abortion was illegal. All they said was that the federal cannot regulate it, that the states must regulate it. That's really what it was. It wasn't even what people thought it was. People were thinking that they were saying abortion is illegal. No, they were saying the states have the authority over that. Okay, so in reality, what quote unquote Roe versus Wade was even back in 71, what that was it was just stating then that the federal quote unquote government had authority over the abortion process. And what were they really saying? They were saying that everyone had to be registered with the federal, because the federal is part and parcel of that, was part and parcel of that dead crown. And all they were saying was they want everybody to be registered as dead with the crown, the dead one, not the living one. And they had to do that in 1971 because of what happened in 68 and 69 and 70, where we were running around marching and yelling about civil rights when we are the sovereigns. Islam, Empress.
Also before Roe versus Wade was, the fact that states were basically doing hysterectomies and things of that nature to our people without their knowledge or consent. And, and in 1970, that was abolished throughout the United States.
You would think it was abolished, but they were still, all they were saying then was that those processes were now approved through them. They abolished it for anyone doing it who didn't get their approval to do it. And really what they were saying was they were taking it out of the hands of the people and putting it in the hands of the corporates doing business as federal, so that they could regulate all of that, because as you know, hysterectomies were still being enacted. It's just that they were saying, don't go to the backdoor alley doctor, which is a hypothecation of the doula, the lawful, rightful, sovereign doula who helped to bring birth to nations as well. They were saying, don't go to them, go to the courts and corporations so we can issue these documents and claim everything, Yes, and put child support, that's not even the right title for that. That's not child support. Child support is not child support when they say it. When they say it, it's human trafficking, because you're having to pay for bodies. That's human trafficking. Child support is child support when we heirs, and this sovereign state, which is the Moors, says It's child support. Child support is everyone taking care of doing what we did today. That's child support. Child support is our state saying we're not going to abort our babies. We're going to properly do everything. Properly. Competently on the public record, and it is the law. That's child support. That's supporting our children. That's proper child support, and it didn't cost any fiat to do it. It is tyranny when it's done by them nobility. That is absolutely true. So this that we're about to look at is something that the corpses and corporations put into effect for corpses. And in fact, I think I'll just go to that page on the screen. So that we can look at the whole thing. I made where Illinois is concerned. So the title of this act is short for action, is the Human Skeletal Remains Protection Act. Okay, let me put it on the screen here. There's a reason why they did not call it an act to protect dead bodies. They didn't call it an act to protect dead bodies because they considered they considered everyone who registered with them the walking dead. So you can't call them dead. You call them remains, skeletal remains, and humans, monstrosities. An act means they're acting. And they will act unless there is proper rebuttal. And when there's proper rebuttal, they stop acting. So let me make it a little bigger. The Human Skeletal Remains Protection Act is amended by changing Section 1 as follows. Look at the wording so that you will know that they were talking about, they were stating that until the Moors, the living, put some things on the public record, we just have to consider them dead and start doing things. Human skeletal remains include the bones and decomposed fleshy parts of a deceased human body. Unregistered graves are any graves or locations where a human body, they didn't say a dead one, they just said a human body, has been buried or deposited. Let me stop there for just a moment. Did you know that cemeteries and funeral homes are banks? And that a coroner is a banker? And that's why they use the term deposited? Yes, they are bankers too. It's all about the commerce.
So is that why a coroner could get a warrant or grand jury indictment like the sheriff?
Yes. Yes, because he was fraudulently claiming bodies as property, as deposits in his bank account. And notice I looked throughout this document, Morris, and whenever they wanted to say dead body, they said dead body. Whenever they wanted to say human body, they said human body. And wherever they wanted to say deceased human body, they would describe the body, whether it be living or dead. So they chose their words carefully. So when they talk about social distancing and everyone being 6 feet apart, they're saying unregistered graves, human bodies. And they were, because see, the foreign spirits are already registered within the book of the dead. Foreign spirits are registered there. And that is why we as the living state must continue doing what we're doing, because in looking at these documents, now this is be it enacted by the people of the state of Illinois Corporation, represented. And this is how you know this is not us. They use the word represented. No one represents the Moors, we present ourselves. It says here it's over 100 years old. So now you're talking about antiquity and our ancestors and all of that. Why did they choose over 100 years old? Why did they choose that? Because you're talking about those who can live far beyond 100 years when we talk about it. Not them, because they don't have the authority to talk about it. It says, and is not in a cemetery. So unregistered graves are any graves or locations where a human body has been buried or deposited. I'll move on. So it says, is over 100 years old and is not in a cemetery registered with or licensed by the state comptroller under the Cemetery Care Act. So these human bodies had to be registered under the Cemetery Care Act with the state comptroller, or else they're just considered unregistered. Unregistered, a human body that's unregistered. It's called stateless. Or, and this is where we got to look at the Prophet's trust and what's been done and what we have done and what we need to continue doing. It says, or under the authority of the Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation pursuant to the Cemetery Oversight Act, whichever is applicable. So
Islam,
they're saying choose your state. State comptroller, choose your state. Yes, Islam Empress.
This has everything to do with what we did this past Thursday. And because it says unregistered graves, and that would only depict that the true nation has not claimed and done their paperwork, because that ties back to the license and the Social Security number and the birth certificate was issued in lieu of the proper national state IDs and such. And then down here it says Illinois. It doesn't say the state of Illinois. It just says Illinois. So
beautiful.
So that would be referring to the true state. And so it says under the authority of, and so there's pretty much saying y'all better do your job. And then the financial aspect, professional regulations pursuant to the Cemetery Oversight Act, which is applicable, whichever is applicable. So they're saying there's a choice there. Choose ye this day whom ye will serve, essentially.
Yes.
And yeah, that part. And so the financial part is where your fiduciary affidavits come into play, and you've taken jurisdiction over all of those, dimensions in this realm.
Yes, 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 Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And Empress and Moors, when we say we're the bank, we mean that.
In every word, in every phrase, in every level, and every color.
Yes. Even when we thought we were citizens, we were still the bank.
Mm-hmm.
Look at this. A human body deposited. Always has been the bank and the money. No matter, okay, but we needed to properly state. And the true state has stepped forward, or else this information would not even have popped up and been coming out. Okay, so our Prophet Noble Drew Ali was pointing us in this direction, saying, hey, put everything in its proper place. Placenta, placement, the conveyance method by which the heirs come into this dimension.
And you know, honestly, I've been doing some research based upon a previous conversation, and it was about liens and how we do our processes of liens. But not by coincidence, when you look up, even if it's Black's Law edition, it says lien, a charge or security or encumbrance upon property, right? Yeah. And then so when you look up social in the definition in just Oxford languages, it says relating to society or organization. So here's the thing I'm getting at. Social Security is a lien by an organization, right?
Yes.
And so, and it's also an encumbrance upon property. So this is also, and then the word social, we think is like social media, social this, social that. So these are just other ways that they are tapping into our resources, which is another form of a lien that they are doing unto us,
yes,
unbeknownst to what we, should be accustomed to. But when we come into the fullness of knowing, like, wait, we got to lien them too, because we don't have given them any, jurisdiction over us at all. We got to take back all of these things.
Yes.
All of them.
Yes.
We're not supposed to be the leaser. We're the ones who are the creditor.
Yes.
And when you took when we was given the Social Security number and all those things at birth, they was at birth saying that we were the dead, and oh, by the way, you were the debtor. And when you thought you bought property, you were nothing more than the leasee, and we're the leaseor by corporation.
Yes. In every transaction and exchange, there's a creditor and a debtor when you're in proper accounting. Okay, unless it's between sovereigns, living sovereigns, then it's two creditors doing business. And the property then becomes the debt or the debtor, not the heirs. Empress, I love that you brought out the Social Security number, because that is why it is imperative and important and proper that we lien the nom de jure as issued by them and then put our proper, true, living natural person in place.
Mm-hmm.
See, I could go just all over the place with this one, but I'm going to stay focused on what we're doing. But I'll just say this even about the one that has been portrayed as Adolf Hitler. What he was doing, and we've seen this in videos that have come out recently, and we've also, done a little bit of reading. He was trying to escape capitalism by the dead. The real Hitler, not the fake one, because there was a hypothecation there too. Okay, the real one was trying to escape hypothecation and help the people not be listed as dead bodies instead of living natural people, human bodies, living bodies. So, he missed the part that from what I'm seeing that he missed was the part that we have done where we take complete control of the all caps as well. We don't just stop at the in capitis diminutio minima and the in capitis diminutio nullo. We say the all caps also but that originates in our state, and anything that has, for example, if I see anything with Pauline Denise Ritchie on it and I didn't generate that, it's fraud, and it's not me. I don't care what it is. Now, what they did was, and what we agreed to, was to start signing those things that we didn't produce, and that made it so that we were acting as if those things are valid, when they're not valid unless they're signed by the heirs. And we proved that in our last meeting with the passport. It says in the passport that it's not valid unless it's signed. So, and then here, let's look a little further. Grave artifacts is talking about any item of human manufacture or use that's associated with human skeletal remains in an unregistered grave. All they're saying is if you're walking around with something that you did not manufacture, then it's associated with a human skeleton. It's remains. That's what passports and driver's license and social security cards and all of that is all about. Grave markers is any tomb, monument, stone, ornament, mound. Now, see, now there's some hypothecation with the mound builders, or other item of human manufacture. And this is an admission that the mounds were made by humans, which were us, the real mounds, that is associated with an unregistered grave. When you talk about mound builders, they were claiming that, saying that that's an unregistered grave, until we properly state that it's not. And this is the part I wanted you to see with regard to the documentation that was filed, with the state of Illinois and all of that. The state of Illinois considers a person to mean any natural individual. What does that mean? That means that it's somebody who doesn't have a state. They're operating as an individual and not as the state. There's a reason why they didn't say natural person, or natural Moorish American, or natural being. They said natural individual because they want to make it clear that it's someone who is operating apart from their state. You can be natural and not have a state, but but then they put you as a person. So for Moors who've been demonstrating powerfully, that's where statehood is so important, like what we put on the public record. Okay? Because we don't need any natural beings to be still considered a person by the state of anything or anyone, because we have our own state. Person means yes, Islam Empress.
Can you scroll back up a little bit, please, or whichever way, and see? So right there is fine. Grave artifacts, grave markers, and then when you got the person, and then I saw that word trust right there.
Yes.
I was like, dear God. And then these definitions, any item, any tomb, and that is also a word in the biblioheliotext. But the item piece right there of human manufacture, that would be giving them access to the death certificate, which is also tying into having them still have access to the trust, because the death certificate issues them another document for them to have access to your estate when you're still dead.
Or thinking you're dead.
In that part, in that way, yeah. When the human skeletal remains are buried in the grave artifacts and so on and so forth, they still want to tap in. Yes.
It's interesting, Empress, that you should say that too, because where it says, listen to me carefully, Morris, because this is the part where our state has to stand, is standing. Where it says here at grave marker, other item of human manufacture, they're saying that all of these things that we accepted that were manufactured, they're grave markers too until we start doing it, until we start producing things and manufacturing things and making things. That's why things made by our sovereign hands are so sacred and so important. So we have to get producing. That's why we needed our own money. We have to get producing. We have to begin producing. And there are Moors out there who are producing already, making jewelry, making sea salt, making clothing and things like that, because they don't want to be a part of accepting any grave markers. Grave markers. Just saying. And we're in transition, so, we're just, there are still grave markers around, but we're actually renaming those as resources while we're in transition to making our own living manufactured items. Okay, so when you hear people talking about the market and how quote unquote America does not produce anything, that's a lie, number one, because we, the living, real, true America, produce heirs. So let's get that straight. We produce actually the real value. Number two, we do have to start making our own, we have to start being both producing and profitable. Okay. By honorable means. So let's look at this other list of person. Person means any natural individual, firm, trust, estate, partnership, association, joint stock company, joint venture, corporation, or a receiver, trustee, guardian, or other representatives appointed by order of any court, and again, in their dead state, but they're going to say that. The federal and state governments, including state universities created by statute, or any city, town, county, or other political subdivision in that dead state. They're telling you right here that it's a dead state. Be it enacted by the people of the state of Illinois, represented in the General Assembly. So all of these are persons in that dead state. By the same token, heirs, any of these that originate in our living state are natural living persons, not individuals. They're never alone. Never alone. Person in our living state are all of these in their living status, as produced and generated by the fiduciaries for life, the living fiduciaries. And then there was a couple of, yes, this part, I'm going to skip down here to section 25, section 10 and section 25. Section 10 says, the Missing Persons Identification Act is amended by adding section 25 as follows. Why are they putting missing persons here in a human skeletal remains section? Why? Because of SETA KV. The SETA QV Act of 1666 says that the heirs are missing or lost at sea. So this is saying Illinois, state, not Illinois, but state of Illinois. Go ahead and just say that they're all either, that whether they're missing or claiming something false, they fall under this act. Okay. And that's what the fall really is. And it's an act, because again, we couldn't be dead. We just have to state it properly. The Missing Persons Identification Act, and again, identification is the deal. Who are you? Who are you? Only you have the authority to say that, to state that. And then you use the power of your state to enforce that. 25, section 25 says unidentified persons. They use the word persons for a reason. It says the coroner or medical examiner shall obtain a DNA sample from any individual, not a state, but individual, whose remains are not identifiable. Now you know what a DNA database is all about. That's why they keep wanting to stick things in people's arms to get DNA, quote unquote DNA. Because they're saying, Islam Empress, they're saying that that people are dead. And if no one rebuts that, let me see. And if no one rebuts that, which we have already, and we're going to show you that we've rebutted it properly, then they continue to say the things that they say, okay? And then the DNA sample shall be forwarded to the Department of State Police for inclusion in the state and national DNA databases. Well, why would they send it to the police? So that they can enforce that someone is, and it's not even police, because they're not police, they're policy enforcers. And those policy enforcers will use the status of stateless unidentified persons in order to do what they do. And we could go on into this, but you have the link so you can read it for yourself, because it's a bit extensive. But I wanted to point some things out with regard to the state of Illinois, because we need to know when you put documents, when you put your documents there with them, instead of keeping your own records and publishing your own records, this is what you're publishing your records to. Because if you use their form, okay, let's make that clear. That's the point of what we're saying and doing is, if you use their form, they're going to put you right where they want you to be. You'll be, you know, that the document will be a person form, okay, so that we are to publish our own by affidavit. Don't use their forms. Their forms are for forms. A form of government instead of the actual government. Now, why are we looking at this? Because we want to know, we want to make sure that we, as we continue to do our the people's business, which is the people are the state, the government, and the law. As we continue doing the people's business, and again, the people do the people's business, not foreigners or anyone else. The people do that. We all do that. We publish and manage and govern our estate. As we continue doing this, we will know that there will be consistency across the records that we put on the public record. We want to have consistency. In other words, we can look at what they did and say, okay, if we want to do an affidavit to properly identify what should that have, what information should be contained in our affidavit. Well, we can look at a fake birth certificate and say, okay, well, all this information right here, we're going to put it in it. We're going to uncorrupt it on our affidavit and put it properly as the state on the public record. That's what all of this is all about, is making sure that we put everything on the public record properly. we're going to, you know, and so I won't go any further with this document because we're getting further along on time. But please take a look at it because there's some things in here with regard to, but we've properly rebutted these things. Here, look, they bring the county in. The county's code is amended by changing section 3-3034 as follows. And then here you're talking about prior to the burial and interment of an unknown individual's remains or any unknown individual's body part. Now, when you talk about body parts, you're talking about placenta, afterbirth. We said we were going to show you where they're claiming it. Here it is. That is why we must return to the ways of our foremothers and forefathers. That's why they put this here, an individual's body parts.
Angel Bay.
Okay, so
how did that three-day command work, Angel Bay?
Let's make sure
how did that three-day command work on your conveyance, your free conveyance, Angel Bay? How did that three-day command work? It didn't work, Angel Bay. Why don't you tell everybody else?
There. So here, we want to be sure that we return to the ways of our foremothers and forefathers so that there is no corruption in where we're concerned. Spiritual corruption, natural corruption, commercial corruption. We are aborting all corruption. So, there is a tag. The medical examiner or coroner shall place a tag that is stamped or inscribed with the DNA log number on the individual or body part. Well, what is a DNA log number? What's a DNA log number? It's a number that classifies the type of cellular makeup you have. Don't tell me that they don't know who the heirs are. You know who we are by our blood type and bloodline. They know. They know. Been known that they're looking at the heirs when they see things, documentation come through. They know that these are the heirs. But if they don't properly state it, then we have to do stateless things with them. They know who you are. It's written that they know who you are. And so how would they even know what to put on the body part if they didn't already know who you are? By way of your cellular birthright and bloodline, which is different for each one of us, but all of ours have the same state characteristics. We have living ONA. We don't even have DNA heirs. Animals have DNA, not the living. Deoxyribonucleic acid means an acidic cell that's made of two parts and not one. We are indigenous. That means not of two genes. We know the etymology of what's being stated so that we can state it properly. We could go all the way through this and, you know, point out where things have been being said. Here, if the police department of any municipality or county investigates abandoned cremated remains, determines that they are human remains, and cannot locate the owner of the remains, that means that human remains are property. Then the police shall deliver the remains to the coroner. Who is the coroner? The coroner is part of the county. The county is part of the sheriff.
Islam, Empress.
Where hierarchies are concerned. Islam.
What you just stated about the DNA versus the other one that you stated, that we have the one, is another form of corruption of blood.
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes.
Because we assume that,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say that they assume in their dead status that we have DNA and not the sovereign living, you know, singular, because we were made by one, and they have two because they have a part of us, the matriarchal energy, and a part of, you know, that part, the Neanderthal. And so,
well, let me clarify that where the hybrid is concerned. The hybrid is also our creation, and we love them, and they have rights on our estate as according to their bloodline. So we're not talking about people. We're talking about corpses and corporations and status. Okay? That's why we say all rise and stand. You know, so we're not mad at people. Everyone must be properly identified, though. A tiger or a bear does not have the same cellular makeup as the living people. So a tiger and a bear, they have a right to live on the land, but everything has to be done a certain way. We can't have bears running around in everyone's domicile, but there has to be order. And so the natural order is what we're pointing to when we talk about hybrids and when we talk about us, because we are a hybrid also, except we are all God and part human. All God and part human. And that's where the term Moorish and Moor come into play. We're Moorish because we are part human and all God. And even our human attributes take on our godness when we state who we really are. So, yes, we're Moors and we're Moorish, but not in the sense of us being part human and part animal. Okay, because there are some who look like humans, but they have some animal characteristics and some animal scientific makeup. Okay, and generally they consider animals to be a part of their family, you know, and that's okay. We're not mad at that, you know. We created all animals too. So they're telling you here all that. Now, why did I bring this up? And we'll put the link to this document here, because like the Empress was saying, they're pointing and saying, and they put the word enact in all capital letters right here. It's concerning regulation. That means heirs, look at this, and please regulate this so that you're not perceived or, you know, so no one mistakes you for the dead. So what did we do? And again, this has everything to do with records being put on the public record at State of Illinois, because what we did also was we looked up, and I'll just go ahead and put this on here too. We looked up, for example, the 1010-5905 document. Because as you all know, we voted on that as well. And these are, again, these are actions where we are remedying the things that need to be remedied for our nation. Okay? For First, we began looking at the 1010-5905 document a few weeks back, heirs, and we took a vote on it. Okay, because our sovereign state gets to say what happens in our, in our state. We began, and I want to thank, and I hope they don't mind me calling their appellations publicly. Some people do mind that. I don't think these two will mind. I want to thank Justice Abbasi Talib Bey and Justice Tia for their sovereign, just continuing to hammer this in and put this forth, that we need to look at this, because we do need to look at it. And they have done some extensive study into this, and they're going to continue to do the study. We'll put forth what we learn from them, because we're learning and remembering even as they're putting the information forth and doing the study on it. Illinois, as we began to, because we were looking, because as you know, we sent notification to Illinois with regard to the 1010-5905 document. Did we send it to Illinois, or did we send it to the state of Illinois? Well, Illinois, the real Illinois, was actually speaking. That's all of us. And we notified the state of Illinois corporation so that they would do what they need to do. And there was some saying about, why haven't they recorded what you all said? Because the real Illinois recorded it. And as we began to look at these records, the first thing I noticed, which is in alignment with what we have been saying and what we've been doing. I'm going to paste these links to the records that we looked at in the chat, and I'll put them under this video. First we noticed that there was at least two different entities claiming to hold records for the state of Illinois. We put the links to both of them in the chat, and we'll put them under this video. I want to take a look at, I want us to take a look at the recording. One of the 1010-5905 recordings that we looked at in our study, I just wanted us to look at this briefly, so that we can see that us sending notification with regard to the 1010-5905 document and putting that document in its proper state was definitely necessary and important, and it was actually of the utmost importance, so that Moors are not considered to be persons by way of this dead state. Okay, so let's take a look at, just briefly, I'll show you these records really quickly. On the screen is the lookup for, now this says Cook County Clerk's Office. That's what it says. However, here in this in the browser, it says www.ctrecorder.org. Okay, but it says here Cook County Clerk's Office. So we looked at this we put in 1010-5905 document, and 91 documents came up here. And as you can see on the screen, and you'll have the opportunity to look at this at your leisure, heirs, because the link will be there. We see that Moors have put documents on this record here. And we first want to say, anything that's showing here, we honor the Moors and the work that they have done. We honor that. We want to ensure that we state that. So this is, now let's look at the other link really quickly. because we checked, and in neither one of these links did we find the original document, the original record from 1928 that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali put on the public record. We never found that his actual filing. It was not on the records.
Islam.
Yes, Islam.
I just want to point out the power that we have as far as what the work we will be doing. But stating for the record, we've been putting DeLorean, people, DeLorean with our sending out of our instruments, and for the DeLorean going with these, and for them to be put on a public record site, for this is magnifying in magnitude. And I just had to point that out because there's been some people asking, well, how do you know these things is working, thus and so? And you know, the DeLorean, how do we know that it's working? There's your proof right there. Islam.
Yes, yes. So I'll say this too, that the Prophet Noble Drew Ali's document is not on in any of these records. Moors have put that document that they say is signed by him. They put and again we say they say it's signed because we were not there. We didn't see him autograph the document, so we can't say for sure whether that is his autograph or not. We can't really say because we don't know. We were not there. However, that 1928 filing is not showing on either one of these websites. What does that mean, Mike? Well, the affidavit that we all voted on and agreed to is not showing on here either. Why is that? It's not supposed to. It's not supposed to show on these two websites. Just like the Prophets does not show on these two websites. Why? Because it came from our court. It's filed with our court. A coroner, again, coroners, policy enforcers, fake sheriffs, anyone in those offices were pretending to be, they were acting as judges and bankers when they're not that. We are judges and bankers. The proof is right there on the screen. We showed you where they're saying things are bodies are being deposited. And they said any court in their state is calling everything and everyone a person under this Cremation and Dead Body Act. So our affidavits and our courts, we are the holders of our records. We don't expect them to hold our records. The Prophet didn't expect them to hold the record either. It's our record. And even the ones that we have seen, the 1010, 5905 that we have seen, it was first presented from a temple. The temple was holding the record. And someone saw it and said, let me put this on the public record. It's on the temple record, but someone said, let's put it on the public record. And then we saw the document and we said, okay, we see the corruption in this recording process. Okay. And again, the Prophet is not, we're not talking about prophets and Moors being corrupt. We're talking about the process of recording it being corrupt. Well, if that process is corrupt, where is the real process of properly recording the Moors? The Moors need to be properly recorded, properly registered with their living state and not a dead one. That happens the same way we've been doing it. We create our living birth affidavits. We create our living documentation of right to travel. We create our own living everything, sovereign security numbers and state security numbers, which are the same. we were to do the proper registration of our documentation and of who we are and how we identify ourselves. So, and that's to avoid any appearance of looking like we're dead. So we looked through these, and you can look through, and you will not see a document from 1929, an entry that says Prophet Noble Drew Ali on it and that he did that. That came from the records of the temple. Honorably, it should have. It should have come from the temple. Whatever temple he put that at, that temple should say, okay, Moors, this is the public, we are publishing this so that all Moors are privy to it and know about it. And those who want to assent can assent. But if it's just slid over to a corpse and a corporation, and I'm not saying that happened, I'm just saying if that, if that would have happened, and a corporation gets their hands on it, instead of it being properly proclaimed by the heirs the way that we did a couple of weeks back. So then what do? Well, we had to correct the record. Which record? The public record. Because, see, those records that we just looked at are corporation records that belong to whatever state is claiming those records. And in that case, it was the state of Illinois. We showed that. So now what we had to do an affidavit. That's what we did. We voted on it as a people. We put the affidavit on the public record, and then we sent it using our sovereign government process of mailing, where we don't use fiat to mail it. We send it because that's the way we do. We use Delarium to do everything we do, or we just use our status and our documentation to get the things we need. So where mailing is concerned, we sent it using our mailing process, and we put that document on the public record. We're putting, and we did a video on that. And so now I wanted to show you really quickly, and then we will bring this Congressional Assembly to a close once I show you these documentations. We wanted to show you, these are the tracking numbers, because it took 9 separate mailing envelopes in order to get the affidavit out, because we sent the fiduciary document, we sent the Constitution, we sent the Zodiac Constitution, and all of these are documents that we have we've properly capitalized, or not capitalized, we've properly written and published. And I'll put the tracking numbers here in the chat. And you'll probably notice with these tracking numbers, when we're doing the people's work, we are very meticulous and detailed about the work that we do, because we know that that everything matters. There are no coincidences, and everything counts. And so you'll notice a pattern with even the tracking numbers, that the last 3 to 4 digits of the tracking number is either 6s or 9s. So we even handpicked the tracking numbers according to our Moorish science, so that the energy that the documents travel with and are conveyed with is our sovereign energy and our natural energy. And so with us using that government process, we went ahead and sent the documents out, and then I'll show you here where they were all received at Chicago, Illinois, not the state of Illinois. It was received at Illinois. And again, here's all of the delivery, the delivery receipts, where we put our sovereign status on the public record for ourselves from our court as voted on by the people, and all were received in a timely manner and fashion. Okay, some were received on the 10th and some were received on the 6th. So, let me see, was it the 6th? That one might be an additional mailing that I sent out a little earlier. Let me just take a look and see. Yes, so we did send something to them on the 10th, yeah. So we want to ensure that our sovereign status is on the public record the way we state that it is, okay? Because it's important for us to know what we're looking at when we're looking at records that are recorded by form, you know, and we know that the energy that those who did those records with is good sovereign energy. We honor that, but we want to be sure that we state first who we are before we let a form try to figure out who we are. And as you can see, there was some underlying qualifications, or if you want to call it that, there were some underlying adhesions that were put on anything that the state of Illinois puts on the public record. There was one other something in that state of Illinois document that I wanted to show you. Let's see. Just one moment. About let me show you. Applicant, yes, this is what I wanted to show you. Let me make sure it's on the screen. Back to this document again, and then we will close here. We'll open the table so that, and the table is actually open already. So if you have any wisdom or anything that you're seeing that you want to put to state, feel free to *6. Here, applicant, and this is about their forms, applicant versus affidavit. See, those words are similar but not the same. There's the word applicant. In other words, you're applying for a job, or you have filled out their form, so you've applied to have something published by them. Applicant means a person in their state. We just read that. They're talking about their state. Applying for licensure, because see, did you know that when you fill out their forms, you're applying for a license? A license means permission to do something, or be associated with something, or be under something. Applicant means a person applying for licensure under this act. And that's applicant for the state of Illinois corporation. Under this act, as a cemetery authority, cemetery manager, or customer service employee. And this is another part that just opened my eyes even further. Any applicant or any person, that's any claiming to be a part of the state of Illinois, period. Any person who holds himself or herself out as an applicant. And they're not saying applicant of the state of Illinois, they're saying applicant, period, in their state. is considered a licensee for purposes of enforcement. That means they can enforce whatever they want because you've given them a license to do so. Investigations, hearings, that's court actions, and the Illinois Administrative Procedure Act. You're giving them permission to do any of this and any of their administrative procedures on you.
Islam. This is still all under the Act of the Dead part, right?
Yes.
Am I just getting this right?
Here it is at the top. Yes, the Human Skeletal Remains Protection Act.
Dear God. I just had to point that out because I was like, wait a minute, this can't still be part of this particular act. Yes. What?
Yes.
What? That means they're controlling, and that's just even more pointing out that they've been controlling us from the dead state, period.
We let them. we were not doing the documentation on the heirs. When the heirs, we were not at the end of the delivery table.
Wow. And then it says license. They took a license to do anything and everything that they want them doing to us because of this right here.
Yes.
Wait a minute. It says Social Security number, confidential information. You just went by it. Confidential information. Where does that say?
Confidential information. Let's see.
Yeah, right here.
Right here?
No, I think you gotta go. There you go. These unique identifiers, including person's Social Security number, home address, home phone number, personal phone number, personal email. Dear God.
Yes.
Personal financial information and any other information protected by law.
Yes. And when they say law in their state, it's not law. State of Illinois. And see, Empress, what you pointed out earlier about whether it says Illinois or state of Illinois, they know what they're saying. This says state of Illinois.
Yeah, right.
So they know whether to put Illinois or state of Illinois because they know the real Illinois is the Moors. That's why we had to put the constitutions on the public record. We must continue to do that. Put those constitutions on the public record in blue in blue ink, and you can use Common English, which they took and hypothecated as dead corpse corporate English. So that was hypothecated too. Listen, heirs, look at this. Cemetery authority means any individual or legal entity that owns or controls cemetery lands or property. Are they claiming land? Until someone properly rebuts them? Yes. That's why we had to do the document that we did and send it and vote on it and make it the law for our state. We had to do that.
And dear God, when you read that application part, that's another piece of pointing out that we must rebut every application, precept by precept.
Yes, yes.
Every application.
Yep.
That's why it's going to take almost 60 looking like instruments.
But look how many they put forth.
Yeah, that part. Dear God, yeah.
Do you know how many cards? And I was just going through because, you know, I'm rebutting point for point the things that they issued, and I have stacks and stacks and stacks of cards, student IDs, military IDs, ATM, debit, credit. And I don't have any credit cards, but debit cards and all of that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That was fraud. All of it was fraud. Because it was issued by a state that is not a living state.
And if you don't do that, go back to a point where it says any
Yes.
Any dead corpse, any dead corpse, and that's how you have to understand it to be any, and that's why you have to do every. What am I saying? Everyone has to be challenged. Every application must be challenged because they're stating any.
Yeah. And you know, when we say all agents, principals, heirs, assigns, and any derivatives thereof, you know, when we leaned the United States Corporation Company, that extinguished this, but we needed to, all law is specific. We needed to get specific with it and put Constitution for Illinois on the public record from our state. Because there are Moors who are asleep. See, what we're doing is we're really making it so that even the heirs who are asleep are protected from violation and molestation and all of that. And I'll tell you this, Moors, and my eyes are just being open to this. Now, just saying what I'm saying, because of the overarching actions that we have been taking as the heirs and as the government and as the law, even the sleeping heirs, now I'll give you an example of this, even the sleeping heirs who call themselves black have protection. Let me give you an example of that really quickly. There was, and let me just pull the story up so that you can read it yourself, because I was looking at it and I was thinking, I know we had everything to do with that because we placed liens and everything. Here, let me just put this on the screen. Okay. Because this has been just seeing this was, I knew, and the ancestors showed it to me specifically because I generally don't even pay much attention to things like this. Because we're so busy doing the work. But let me just put this on the screen, because you got to see this and know that the things that we're doing is providing overarching protection, because we're not just thinking about ourselves. We're saying all Moors. And that's why we say all Moors for everything, because they're sitting up saying any person. And those sleeping Moors don't know they're not that person. They're not a person at all. They have authority over persons though. So let me put this on the screen because it's on there. So here there was someone, a mailman, a delivery man of some kind, who thinks he's black. And we're not denigrating anyone. He's going to wake up when it's time for him to wake up. But he lodged a complaint against the corpse that was doing business as sheriff at Pierce County, quote unquote, Pierce County Corporation, because he said that he was following him, that the one that was previously doing business as fake sheriff was, and we're not talking again about, we're not mad at people, we're talking about spirits and corpses and corporations that are stateless. Well, the one who thinks he's black said that the sheriff was following him when he was just doing his job of delivering things. I don't know because I wasn't there. I just know that what's being reported is that the one that was previously doing business as sheriff, who has been leaned, he was leaned about 1.5 years ago, about a year and a half ago, and not he, but the corporate, that corpse office, fake office that the subject was occupying unlawfully, that office was liened. So let me clarify that. That office was liened, because we don't aim our liens at living, breathing beings. We aim it at corpses and corporations that are unlawful and stateless on our land. That office was liened, and it's not even a real office because we're the sheriff. And since that time period, the one who thought he was black reported him, and they arrested the one that was doing business as sheriff. They arrested him, and then what did they do? They said, okay, they arrested him, and then he stayed in there for a minute, and then they let him out after a while, some days, I believe, or maybe it could have even been, a week or two. I didn't look, because again, I was not really paying attention to this until the ancestors pointed out that, yes, this is because of the work, the overarching work of saying all Moors, that we're actually, Moors, when we put that in our documents, we're actually protecting our family members and our kin who don't know they're Moors, or who even say, I'm not a Moor. You can say that all day, but we're going to protect you still. So the one that was previously doing business as sheriff was arrested. And then after a while, he got out. And something else happened. We just keep putting things on the record. And when we put things on the record, we watching, and then something else happens. Well, something happened, and after him being out, they said, okay, you're going to have to pay $10,000 or we're going to put you back in there. Now, this was the one that was doing business as head sheriff, Pierce County, here, Washington Territory. Of course, he was in a corpse dead stateless state. So they're doing exactly as we command them to do. We're not even concerned about whether that's happening or not. We just keep putting the documentation out, putting it out. And now even those Moors by bloodline and birthright who think they're black are getting some protection until they wake up, because they already know it's just a matter of time before he hears from some of the other Moors in the territory that he's a Moor. And then he's going to see some red documents, and if he put a red document on the public record, the protection, boom. So even those who are asleep are being protected by the overarching all Moors peace. Because see, we can look out for ourselves, but that's not going to even help us. It's not, because that's not the way our ancestors meant for it to be. They meant for us to all move together and to be the state, be the government, and say it that we're the government, we're the state, we're the law for all on our land. And here's the thing: there are foreigner, and I can't even call them foreigners. There are those with the lighter, fairer skin, the modern Europeans who have come here, and they actually came here. Some of them came here to help. Some came here to help, and you know, they need protection because they can't run around here stateless either. They have to be in their proper status. So it's our job to protect. That is what our state is, a neutral protective state. We're neutral because everything comes from us, and all of the resources that come from the source are neutral. And when we say neutral, those resources will respond based on the energies that are speaking about those resources. And if you want to know what a neutral protective state, what the responsibilities of a neutral protective state is, read the Geneva Conventions. Read them, and you'll see what the responsibilities of our state is. Okay, and there are 4 Geneva Conventions. That 4th one, when there are some who were concerned about, oh, dirty more this and dirty more that. Don't worry about that, because it's already written into everything that has to be done. We don't have to worry about dirty Moors, because in my opinion, there's no such thing as a dirty Moor, simply because there's just Moors whose mind is more colonized, and they won't let go of that old programming. But they actually have to pay a price for that until they do. They'll be tested out of that we have been calling dirt and dirty Moors. They're going to be tested out of that. And their test and the severity or non-severity of the test will depend on them, not us. And I can't say not us, because it does depend on us because of what we state on the public record. But the testing depends on them and their energies and how soon they, let go of the programming that talks about ego and all of that stuff. That stuff has to be, we can't let that block, us and who we are and our proper status and our demonstrations and our energies. We're portals for ancient ancestral energies and information. And it's coming from within us. We're not open and letting any old thing from out there come inside of us. It's already in us. It's in our blood. Our blood is just remembering. So I'll say that and let that be what it is. Let me see. I want to be sure that this is the right, because this looked like a separate Pierce County sheriff from the one that's here. Let me make sure I put the right story on here. If that be the case, then I guess 2 of them have been arrested. Let me go back to this is Tacoma, Washington. Yeah, okay. The other one is, I guess that's Pierce County, California. Wow. This is the one, Pierce County sheriff charged with false reporting after confrontation with newspaper carrier. This is the right story right here. Wow. It says here, charged with 1 count of false reporting and 1 count of making a false or misleading statement to a public servant. Do you know what that means? Wow. That means that the public servants are stating that they are serving the Moors and not any corpses and corporations. Because when I look back at the documentation that the corpses did when we were detained, when we were being detained, and they were trying to get us to accept a false status, that was one of the things that they put for their corpse, a false statement to a public servant. A false statement to a public servant. We just had to do the things that we've been doing more in order to let the public servant office know that no, you are a custodian in our office and not in any corpse office. And this story is proof that they're no longer working for the corpses, they work for the Moors. Period.
Islam says that it is rebutted properly.
Yes.
Precept by precept.
Yes.
I'm so glad we're talking about this today, because it's like we are connected, because I know we are. And this is just confirmation about everything that I've been saying, confirmation that I've been saying about you got to pay attention to the details of the little things about what they are and not doing at the same time, because even in not doing something, they're still doing something. And even in doing something, they are doing what we said to do.
Yes.
And it all matters.
Yes. Yes, absolutely it matters. It matters. And if we, if we, as we, because we're going to continue doing what we're doing, as we're doing what we're doing, they, more, we're the law, period. We're the real sheriff, period. For our state, we're the sheriff. And anyone pretending is at risk. They're at risk. They're putting themselves at risk. One false move. Okay, don't pretend to be something that fake sheriffs, they have to be custodians in the office of, or else they're putting themselves at risk if they don't declare properly who they are. And when I say at risk, again, we don't do anything physically. This is why, Moors, we don't have to pick up guns. We don't have to do any of that. We don't have to do any of that.
Islam, speaking about guns, remember that article I showed you about the gun laws that have been changing? And you said it has to be competently expressed by the state. And then I was like thinking further, and I said to somebody, yes, because the state must say that you are a national, and you put on the record publicly that you are a Moorish American federal government national, therefore, and competently, stating that, therefore you have the right to bear arms. But if you don't have that on the record, therefore you cannot, because you are not a national. Period.
That's good, Empress. I'm glad you brought that up. We'll say something really quickly about that. When people say right to bear arms, a lot of times they don't read the rest of the sentence. You got to read the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
The rest of it says a well-organized militia. What's a well-organized militia? For us, a well-organized militia is we come together and we say, okay, we start putting gun safety measures in place where we give training on that for the Sharifian peace officers, and then we start making sure that if we have weaponry, that we show, that our state issues the licensing for that weaponry and the training for that weaponry, and that we put on the public record that this weaponry is registered under our state trust and not a dead foreign state.
That's wrong. So that means eventually we're going to have to do a document for the NRA.
We're the National Rifle Association, all day, every day, been that. They are custodians in the office of.
Well, I'm just saying an affidavit that rebuts their application
to
do business.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you said that, Empress. That's good.
Islam.
Affidavits rebut applications. Now, let me say this too real quick about that. Keep energies clear with regard to that whole weapons thing and all of that. Now, me personally, I don't think we need them. My consort feels otherwise, but he has a right to his thoughts. I don't think we need them because I'll tell you, with all the work that we've been doing, we have felt no threat at all, and there is none. So, But when it comes time, if the ancestors say well-organized militia, then we're going to well-organize a militia. If that's what the ancestors, whenever, I know that they will unfold everything in a timely manner, and that if we try to abort their plan, then things happen that are not good. Okay? Protective measures begin to be put in place.
Mm-hmm.
And we're good with letting the ancestors unfold everything in a timely manner. We're good with that. Islam, nobility, there was the noble who was going to speak. Islam.
I just want to say something about the arms comment. A lien is also considered an arm.
Yes, it is.
A lien is considered an arm, and when it comes to the militia and us controlling the arms, I think it was something I heard on the AMPAC video. They were going over the Act of Algiers, and it says something in reference to the Moors having control over all the arms on the land, all the guns and everything. We have control over that. We can revoke licenses or whatever, you know. But I just wanted to interject that, so something to think about for the Moors out there.
Islam. Listen, who knew liens were the real weapons? Because, see, our documentation, and when I say liens, I mean lien affidavits, not their forms, because every form that they put out is an application. That means you're asking and requesting, and we don't do that. We give commands by affidavit. So who knew a lien was the real arms? I knew in my spirit that it was, and that's why we put that process forth in 2018 and said we're going to publish this lien process by affidavit, and because it needed to be put out there. And we caught a little bit of blowback, a lot of blowback, even from Moors about that, but the ancestors said just keep going. And now we're starting to see liens are arms. We have a right to bear arms. And think about it, Moors. There's a line where there's some distortion coming from somewhere. Okay, yeah. Think about it, Moors. A lien, they always say the pen is mightier than the sword. That's how I knew in my spirit that we were using the right weapons, and that I did not need to do militia and all of that. We didn't need to do that, but we did need to state that, yes, at any point in time when the ancestors say that it's time, we will do according to the Constitution and a well-organized militia. But you know what? I'll say this about that too. I think we're already a well-organized militia, especially knowing that liens are arms. In fact, I know that. In my spirit, I know that. That's how come I don't feel any threat at all. Because no one can pick up a gun unless they had a piece of paper first. No one can pick up a gun unless they have a piece of paper first. Even those fakes would go and get a war rant, or they would have some paper that says that it's gun time. We didn't need to pick up guns. We needed to get to those papers and abort those papers, abort what they were trying to do. That's where abortion needed to take place, is on the documentation. So with that being said, we're going to pare it down so that this call doesn't go another hour or two, because I could go all day just pointing things out about how we're doing all the right things, Moors, in terms of our documentation. We don't need to fill out their forms. We have our own. Our state speaks by affidavit. Our state does not speak by forms, because we're not a form of government. We are the government. And at some point, I had some reservations about that, but where I am right now in terms of what I keep seeing about that dead state is that let's just keep speaking by affidavit. Even the Pope, the ones that were the custodians in the office of Pope, spoke by bulla, which was an affidavit. They didn't speak by filling out a form at the Vatican. They spoke by an affidavit and called it a bulla. And even those ones that were in the custodians in the office of president spoke by executive order, which is not a form. It's something where they quote the Constitution and they say, we have the authority to say this because of their Constitution. So forms you know, that's just not something that, you know, we're not going to do it. Now, again, we're not denigrating any Moors who do it. We're not being derogatory towards Moors who do that. If you want to do it, you're sovereign. You can do what you want to do. We're going to do it this way. And this is the way our sovereign state we speak, because we know that affidavits, even in commerce, affidavits have the highest level of authority. You know, can you rebut a form with another form? You can try, but they're all going to say the same thing. But you can rebut a form with an affidavit. And you cannot rebut an affidavit with a form. That's how you know. You can't rebut an affidavit with a form. And they only use forms. So are there any other comments or any other wisdom about what we have put on the table today and shared? And our eyes are open. Islam Empress.
This is Rose Spirit Bay. Okay, so I'm the one that was trying to tell the story, and I think 2 meetings ago, and I couldn't. So, yeah, but, you know, this is on point, because as you were talking about the skeleton, part of what I was going to share was then I had a dream. I went through this whole big initiation, and it's a big story where I literally felt the dead around me, and it was one of the scariest things in my life. But it was, you know, my guides trying to help me, you know, awaken and move and get things done and stuff like that. So, you know, I had nationalized in December, but it took me some time to really open my eyes to, like, oh, you really actually need to get out of the system. And some things happened, and I had some testing and some other things that I had to go through myself on a spiritual level. But when you're reading about the skeleton thing, one thing that happened where I really fully came into myself and really started to take studying seriously was I had this dream where I was sitting on the bed, and then next to me was like a skeleton, you know, and I took the skeleton and it turned into a beautiful dress, you know, and I put it on, and like for me that represented like I retrieved that dead part of me, like the straw, you know what I mean? Yeah. And then women, Moorish women with the same dress came to me, and they had like, you know, tribal paints in the middle of their forehead. Mm-hmm. And they were like, and I had a guide, a male guide that was supposed to help me deliver me to him, but he had been compromised, and I think he represented, I think in the dream, because, well, you know how the dream symbolism, but he was like a big red dog, and but I think he had been compromised, and they were like, "What took you so long?" Mm-hmm. And it was like, and they were like, there were issues with time, and one of the things I had experienced during my initiatory process was I was feeling the timelines shift, and things happen with time, and time slowed down, and you know. Like just a lot of things that would be another call for me to really explain everything. And they were like, there were issues with time, you know, and because, you know, I mean, all the dead, or, you know, the Albions have now is just this magic, you know, that they're trying to use. But, you know, Spirit had prepared me for this because I had went to visit some family, and those family, you know, they're Moors, but they're sleeping. And they had me watch a movie, though, because Spirit moves in all types of ways, and they had me watching, I think, the X-Men movie with the guy that who was, you know, in the office of a doctor, and his arms broke or whatever. Mm-hmm. He became like the master of time. But because I've been doing a lot of spiritual study even before I even nationalized. Mm-hmm. Like, I knew it was a twisted movie. You know what I mean? I was like, no. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it was like they kept trying to stop the time so that what they were saying was the monster wouldn't destroy the world. And I was like, no, I actually think the monster is good. But I remembered that when I was experiencing these things, and then also before I had started to experience these things, I also had a dream of Whoopi Goldberg. She had her arms behind her back, and she was tied back, and she was talking to me. She was like, get your stopwatch, you know. And so I knew that it was like, okay, all this was, I was being prepared because one of my tests was going to be time, you know, working through time. But anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to say, and then so the empresses were like, these spiritual empresses were like, what took you so long? Oh, issues with time. And they were like so mad. They were like, we taught you everything you know. And I was like, oh, this is the Moors for real. Yeah, so yeah, that's what I wanted to share last time, but this, you know, the whole skeleton thing, I was like, oh, I have to share now because yeah, this is definitely in alignment. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Empress. We do wear the same garments, that is for sure. Those are the garments of peace, love, truth, freedom, justice. Yes. That's a profound, very profound dream. Your subconscious is conscious. It's not even subconscious anymore. It's conscious.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, Empress. And listen, you taught you everything you know because you are speaking to you from the ancient realms.
Yes, that's very true. Very true.
Yep. We all are, we each are, and I'm just grateful that we recognize one another because that was actually part of this that we agreed to do. Before we came here, we said, okay, when you get there, we gotta find each other and recognize each other, and then do what was done in X-Men, because we're the X-Men actually.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's a chromosomal statement. Yeah, the X chromosome.
Yes.
Islam. Thank you, Empress, for sharing that, because we got this. That's all I can say. It's a wrap.
It sure is.
Yeah. So, Empresses, matriarchs, my heart is your heart. We are one. We are one. We are one. And that will never change. It will never change. We will always be one. We knew each other through time immemorial, throughout the ages. We've always been sisters, and we always will be. I just felt in my heart to say that. So, with that being said, if there's nothing further, are there any other comments or wisdom from anyone? You can star 6 if you have anything. Islam. Okay. Islam, Empress.
I was trying to find information regarding oxynucleic acid. I can't find anything when I search the internet.
On oxy, you know what? You're probably not going to find anything right now. Well, let me say this. That's not true. You will find it. Study DNA so that you can find out why they call it that, why they call it deoxyribonucleic acid. And the truth is actually in the etymology of the word they used. Deoxyribonucleic acid, it is a description. Acid is the key, Moors, and that's why things that are alkaline are healers. So with regard to your question, Empress, study DNA, and your spirit will tell you, and they'll say it in there too, because they have to tell the truth in what they put out there. They have to tell the truth, but then they put a lot of colorability and stuff around it. So when you study DNA, you will realize and know, and then it will say it in there about mitochondrial DNA. And what mitochondrial DNA really is. It comes from mother, and how and the difference between animal DNA and what they call human DNA. So the word itself, deoxyribonucleic acid, If you, when you study etymology, you will know that that's not the right word for us. Etymology will actually tell you whether scientifically it's the right word or not. The etymology of the word.
Okay. Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been studying.
We actually could have called it onoxyribonucleic acid. We could have called it because that would mean one instead of deoxyribonucleic acid. O-N-E, onoxyribonucleic acid is what technically that would be the right term for what we have because we are of one gene. Now, further proof of that is in the study of the matriarch and how from ancient times before we created our sons, we actually gave birth from within us without the aid of any man. That's where they based all of that virgin birth thing on, was our history. And further proof of that, and I say that because it only takes one of us to make what we need to make because of the sovereign status. But further proof of that is that when our sons are born, they already have in their anatomy the sperm that they need because we give it to them while they're in us. Therefore, we have the ability to make sperm within ourselves. In ancient times, before we created our sons, we gave birth without the aid of any man because there were no men. That's why we are called X-men. X-men. There were none. And our Prophet Noble Jure Ali said that, and read the Prophet Noble Jure Ali's hadiths, and then look at the science of all of this. Science says we have the authority to make sperm because we do. We do it whenever we have a son. There it is. He comes into this realm with all of his parts that he needs because we created while he's within us.
That reminds me of the story of Queen Khalifa. She was said to be an Amazon, and she and the women only, had sex with men to procreate, and then they would kill the men.
That is some hybrid subrogation type of, but yes, I've heard that. I've heard that before too. They base that on a Black Widow type of situation. But what that comes from, and again, we could go all day with this, but we won't. What that comes from, where they talk about us killing a man, we didn't really kill them. We just subjugated them. We made them subjects so that they could not move about commercially. Because that's what killing is. We never harmed the beings that we created. We just, on paper, commercially, we did some things. And that's what a birth certificate is. It's really a death certificate for the living. A birth certificate issued by a dead state is a death certificate for the living. So we didn't kill the men after we made it with them. We just said, okay, you're my subject. You're my servant. You can't do commerce because you work for me. That's what we did back then. And then the patriarchy age came in, and the patriarchs then did that. Where they said, okay, women, you stay at home, we'll go out and bring home the bacon. All that was just commercially we could not move about without them. So when we hear the term killing throughout time, we just have to know that we did that on paper, and everyone had to go with what we autographed, what we put by affidavit. They had to do it. Or else then physical death would be the result. You know. So that's awesome. I mean, I'm glad that we don't have to do that anymore, because we love our sons, and you know, in this transitionary period, and even during the patriarchy, you know, we love our consorts. We don't want to do anything to lessen who they are on paper. And we really kind of, we don't do that because we just don't do it. So with that being said, is there any other comments, questions, or anything of that nature? We will end here. We will adjourn here until Thursday. Thank you all for coming, and thank you to those who come in good and early. Peace and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous, natural, divine heirs. Islam.
Islam.
Islam. Islam, peace and grand rising.
Peace and grand rising.
Peace and love.
Peace and energy.
Islam, 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 Islam.